Okay, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I've turned my mic on, so it should be good. I'm just going to turn this off. I thought I'd just introduce myself face to face. My name is Richard Wells, and I'm going to talk you through a few things that we're doing in New Zealand education, and I'm going to talk about what I think is really important, which forms the kind of foundation under any kind of technology use you're using. So I'm going to go back to my slides. And here we go. So you should be able to see my slides now. And I'll begin. I've scripted this because if I don't script it, I'll go on for hours. So wish me luck. So as I say, hi, my name is Richard Wells. I'm a deputy principal of Ariwa College, which is north of Auckland in New Zealand. I'm also the author of A Learner's Paradise, which is a book about how New Zealand is kind of reimagining education. I'm really excited to be doing this and talking to the world. Please fire in any questions you have as I present, and I'll have some time at the end to answer those, hopefully on screen. I'll apologise now that I'm not talking to you in a New Zealand Kiwi accent because I'm from the UK originally. I guess one of the reasons I'm presenting to you today about how wonderful it is to live in New Zealand is because I'm not originally from here, and I think I appreciate how amazing this place is and how amazing the New Zealand education system is, probably more than the average Kiwi does. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to question what purpose school has in the 21st century, and how it's changed from the school I went to 20 years ago, and how technology is challenging the status quo while also opening up opportunities and empowering school students in a way that has many of them, including ones at my school, questioning whether they need to be at school for as long as they once did. I need to talk about the responsibility for learning and who feels responsible for that learning in the average school around the world. Many education systems around the world still place a lot of pressure on teachers for the achievement of their students, and how this mindset damages the potential learning that can take place in a school. I'll briefly take you through some of the core aspects of the New Zealand education system and why it's so 21st century ready and amazing, and also really adaptable to all the ongoing change. I'll finish by discussing some simple steps that I think all schools around the world can take to better prepare their young people for what will be a very different world in a couple of decades. So my first question concerns the purpose of school. I am certain that this must have changed in the world that has rapidly developed so quickly over the last 2 decades. As teachers, we need to adjust to how different the world is today compared with even just 10 years ago. For example, the impact that social media is having in all aspects of our lives, including some elections I've recently heard about. The question for teachers is that, would you, the teachers in the world, are you, the question for teachers is that, what world are you preparing your current students for? Are the challenges that your students will face over the next 20 years represented by the activity in your classroom? The issue for me is that regardless of talking about it for 20 years, the factory schooling model still resides in most education systems around the world. Institutions such as schools are proving that change is hard and takes time. The still common factory approach to schooling develops a factory mindset inside every child. Historically, it was important for factories to devalue self-awareness, as individual talents were not part of the factory operation. But devaluing self-awareness is what factory schooling around even the developed world continues to do. There's no denying that what we used to refer to as the future is already upon us. The factories that we once prepared all our students for either don't exist or are now manned by very small and decreasing numbers of human beings. In fact, over the next 20 years, it is clear from what is already happening that technology will challenge the nature of what it is to be human. The way in which automation already impacts on the workforce, the available jobs, and even our sorry, just saw a question. Available jobs and even our everyday lifestyle places questions around exactly what school is preparing people for. A study by Oxford University has predicted that 47% of job types fall into their category of likely to be replaced by 2030. That's quite a poignant year because that's the exact world the children starting school next year will leave school to enter. If the phones in the hands of my students are already answering knowledge requests on demand, what purpose does any standardized test have in 2016? The world is changing rapidly enough that entire populations are being challenged to find some place within this 21st century economy. Just a little story from this week. This is a TED talk I saw recently, which I've linked to on this slide if you want the link. In this slide, the lady discusses how modern parents are often doing so much work for their children, particularly in the developed world. Young people often do not develop a sense that they can do things without assistance from others. Parents feel the pressure to get their children into the best schools and colleges as if it's the only way to safeguard their future. But the issue that I had with that after seeing that this week was that a few weeks ago in New Zealand, the era of qualifications as we know it is over, as is NZQA, according to the chairperson of the New Zealand Qualifications Authority. So in New Zealand, the person who runs the qualifications is challenging the design and purpose of them. What she was highlighting was that the value of historically earned qualifications decreases in a world where technology can replace the need for a skill or knowledge which only recently were highly valued. I thought I'd give a personal story. Using myself as an example, 5 years ago, I was a teacher in a classroom. You've probably heard of those things. For me, the discovery of professional social media use allowed me to make my knowledge and skills very visible to the world. Making these connections opened up lots of opportunities to me, including presenting to you today. This visibility has led organizations to fly me around the world to share this knowledge. I've been offered a book deal, and this ability to have impact on the profession has then formed a significant part of achieving promotions and new job opportunities for me. And all of this without further formal qualifications. This experience has led me to question significantly what the world will be like for our current schools children. So as you can see, I'm challenged by all these changes in the world. And so I start to ask myself, what on earth should we be doing? I've been to hundreds of schools, to be quite honest, around the world who are filled with technology. And even though they're filled with technology, they still have a feeling, and when I look around, it generally looks quite a lot like the school I went to 20 years ago. And so I'm trying to work out, as an educator, what really makes the difference. And in 2016, I've sort of really, I think I've hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned anyway. So who feels responsible for the learning in your school? Is it the teachers, the parents, or the students themselves? Who is feeling the pressure for grades the most? The sense of empowerment and responsibility for learning is the most important issue in schools that are preparing young people for a world of increasingly rapid change. To help explain what I mean by this, I will take you through a conversation I had with a student this year. I was discussing with a 13-year-old boy, "What is your favorite subject at school?" He explained to me it was art. I questioned what he was currently doing in art, and he replied with the fact that he was making clay animals. I asked him, "Why are you making clay animals?" And as you can see here, his response was, "I don't know. It's like math. It's like a math test. The teachers give you this stuff and you do it." For this boy, his clay elephant was the same as most math tests. In fact, most tests around the school, in the sense that it was all just work issued by teachers to be completed within timeframes set by teachers. Assessment was based essentially on how much one felt like complying with the instructions and the deadlines. Like a test, any concern about how well the art was going was to be left until the work had been graded. It's not a pretty picture, in fact, and I've had a lot of conversations like this this year. What seems like the most basic of questions, how are you doing, is a question that can challenge most students in most schools around the world. School communities feel the responsibility for the success of the children is in the hands of the teacher. So so a lot of the parents feel that it's the teacher's job to educate the child. This makes children passive participants in the process. The success or quality of any output from a school activity is not often a concern for many children because it's not their job to be aware of the progress during the activity itself. So this is a diagram I've been showing a lot of teachers this year. By placing the responsibility on the teacher for the learning and success of a classroom, leads many teachers to standardize their approach to success. This leads students to feel they will be processed by the external system and should not be concerned with how they are developing as an individual or what they might bring to the situation. A number of times I have had parents in my office demanding particular teachers for their children, as if to say their child was no part of this equation when it comes to succeeding or not. This also leads to teachers feeling high levels of anxiety and stress, which in turn might, and I say just might, be leading to the current global shortage in teachers. The primary shift that schools have to start to make is in changing mindsets of both students and teachers so that individual learners feel responsibility for their own progress. We need young people to enter the schools with a sense that they are there to self-develop and not be processed by a system. We need them to be self-aware enough that they question what they might get from the day at school, rather than stand around waiting for activities and work to be issued. Now, I'm just going to pause here and just see any questions that have come in so far. No, just lots of praise and good lucks and big shout outs. Thanks, guys. So I'll carry on. So let's talk about New Zealand, my favorite place. And the fact that the education system I now work under I think must be set up to be the most future focused in the world. So there you go, Finland. So how is an entire country achieving this, and why do I keep talking about New Zealand? Millions of teachers are trying to do exciting things in their schools, but eventually feel restrained by tests and national assessment systems, and so end up focusing activity on small predefined lists of topics and answers. And I can tell you that America and the UK are certainly are almost going backwards in some respects in that regard. So let's look at some of the things that we do in New Zealand and why it's so different over here. It really comes down to a matter of trust. Okay, and I can tell you the American teachers are going to like this. In New Zealand, every government-funded school is trusted to design its own curriculum to suit the needs of its local community. Our national curriculum is very much a framework for schools to design their local curriculum on. Schools decide where to spend their money, be it technology or not. Oh, and by the way, they're well funded as well. Schools also decide on the approach and format for learning. What really makes this so future focused is that teachers are trusted to design the assessments that will measure the students against that curriculum all the way through to high school graduation. On this slide, you can see my friend of mine, Danielle, and she's designing assessment around the passions and interests of their students. And that goes on to nationally recognized assessment as well. It is this level of trust that results in a flexible and adaptive system that can be shifted and redesigned to meet the needs of this rapidly changing world as this change happens. So here's some more exciting things. In New Zealand, every individual student can choose how to express their learning, even including through assessment. Each student can express their understandings and talents in multiple ways during the very same assessment. Yes, you can have one person producing a video while somebody else writes an essay. That is allowed. Technology has a huge impact on a system where video, audio, written text, blogging, and collaboration can all form part of a nationally recognized assessment. With flexible assessment comes extremely adaptive learning. Development and preparation for such work means that students are free to personalize their whole approach to learning. On top of this, teachers are supported by a nationally recognized and resourced approach to professional development. Our Teaching as Inquiry program is developing an extremely reflective teaching profession to collaborate and make incremental improvements in their teaching and professional learning. And I can tell you it's an extremely exciting place to be. Okay, I do appreciate that not all countries are in such a positive place regarding their education system in the way it's supported and developed. So I thought I'd take you through some key elements that I think can be enacted in any classroom or school immediately that will help you develop 21st century mindset in your students and teachers. So here's another one of my pretty little diagrams. That's another reason I'm here, actually, is because I'm a fine art grad and I like drawing and colouring in. Our New Zealand curriculum starts with our 5 key competencies. It's right at the beginning of the document, and it shapes the rest of the document. There are many schools, for example, in New Zealand who no longer, even high schools that no longer have subjects, they no longer have classrooms, they no longer have set lessons, they have students designing their own timetable for the week, etc. And it's all part of our focus on key competencies. So the first one is thinking, and to the level at which you think. The second one is relating to others. The third is using text, images, movement, and symbols to communicate your ideas. Your fourth one is of course, managing self. And number 5 is participating and contributing to this world we live in. In my school, much of our reporting is now based on these 5 key competencies. No matter what the subject or the theme of the work being carried out by the students, we will look for evidence in their level of ability in these 5 areas. Students are involved in this process. Students will often be asked to design and negotiate their own marking matrix and consider the effectiveness of their contribution to any activity or project in relation to these 5 key concerns. I'll do my best to sum it up. Here we go. So there's no point having a great thought if you can't have empathy for the others that will be impacted by it. There's not much point having relationships with others if you can't successfully communicate your thoughts and messages. None of this will happen if you don't manage your time, your tools, and the way in which you interact with people around you. And none of this at all will take place or be successful at all if the students aren't discussing how they best participate and contribute to all situations. So for me, I'm really proud to be working in a system that really not only just has this as a sort of a fluffy nice to have at the front of their formal documents, but actually has schools increasingly basing the foundation of everything they do around them. And as long as students are discussing these things and being more self-aware in regards to them, you really start to produce adaptive students. So here's my little view of what really is important in any school, in any classroom, in any setting. Aside from the key competencies that we have in New Zealand, I also have my own view of 3 simple elements that our classrooms are increasingly showing awareness of. Every individual learner must feel that they are regularly making decisions. The more decisions they get to make, the more engagement you'll find in your classroom. They must feel that they own the learning, and it is not something that is being fueled by a prearranged set of goals. Every learner in the 21st century must be taught and equipped to track their own progress. If you want to know why computer games are so popular, it's because gamers are very aware of where they have been, where their successes have been gained, and what they're currently aiming for. This is another area where technology has a huge part to play in offering access to data directly to individual students in real time. Through tracking their own progress and knowing their current status, learners should be expected to plan and develop their own next steps based on their available resources. It's through these three features of any classroom and any individual experience of school that you really start to empower students and build confidence to actually take on things themselves. And this is what I think the purpose of school today is. So back to the purpose, I've often heard the phrase that it's important that people learn how to learn. I like to always rephrase this as learning how I learn. The emphasis on the fact that it's about self-awareness and self-development, having the confidence to move and plan one's own success. Confidence allows us to work with others and not rely on ideas of systems around us, not rely on the idea that the systems around us will always cater for our needs. So I've been online for 5 years, and I'm available at eduwells.com and eduwells on Twitter and Google. And it's been amazing to be able to do this, and I'll just jump in to a few questions, and I'll put my my lovely face back on the screen as well. There you go. Hi everyone. This is quite strange. 118 viewers. Wow. Hi everyone. Thanks for watching, everybody. So questions. Big shout out to New Zealand. How do you get parents to buy into understanding the shift in responsibility from solely on the teacher to more the student? Well, a lot of schools who have gone down this track in a full sense have done huge community awareness programs. They've invited the community in. They've sent information out. A lot of our new schools have been set up. All our new schools in New Zealand over the last 10 years have all been built without classrooms and all based on all these the features I've been talking about. And so there is a growing awareness of it. And whenever I am talking to parents personally, as I enroll students in our school, it's a very easy sales pitch to have when you explain and you remind parents what it was like to be at school, and you ask them, were you ever aware of self-development and how you could control and take charge of what happened? And once you start talking about their child taking charge of themselves, it all starts to make and feel like common sense. How are teachers prepared for designing curriculum? I am a teacher, but have found that teaching and designing curriculum are two very different things. I don't feel that I have been trained for curriculum design. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, you're right. It's a skill that is being developed. We started this whole process, I would say, and it's if you go right back to the beginning, you're looking at about 15 years. Any country that was going to get to the point where we've got to, it would take 10 or 15 years at least. And you can see, and I've been witnessing over the last decade, how teachers have slowly got their head around these things. But a lot of it's to do with the support we get from all the agencies around the country, the ministry, our government Ministry of Education, and how they support schools and really promote and push schools to say that it's okay to take risks and collaborate and try things out. And so teachers are getting more used to to taking risks and trying things out and working together. I think, being a small population of just 4.5 million, we are quite a tight-knit community of educators. I'm connected. A lot of us online are all connected across, and we can see each other's projects and things, and we benefit from learning from each other. But as I say, it's government endorsed to push forward and do student-centered learning and student negotiated curriculum as well. Agile adaptive curriculum is amazingly endorsed and promoted by our government and our ministry. So in that circumstance, all this seems fairly, it's a bit easier to push. Any other questions? How can we help this approach continue to shift into post-secondary education model? That's a very good question. Universities. Yeah, in New Zealand, I'd argue the universities are again one step behind. They unfortunately, the universities, unlike state schools and government schools, universities do add in that extra layer of commerciality. So they have a product to sell. And so change is a more risky business when universities are competing against each other. This is the disastrous impact of setting up competitive models. The minute you go competitive, which I think you might be doing so in the States quite soon, once you start setting up competitive models, you lose that sense of growth as a profession and peer supporting, and so the universities are struggling to risk with that change that the secondary schools and the elementary schools and the kindergartens are doing. I went to a kindergarten last year where the 4-year-olds were not only on a leadership program, but were doing design thinking exercises around public amenities, which isn't bad for 4-year-olds. So yes, universities will struggle as long as they feel like they're competing for students and competing for international students that might be coming from systems that aren't as future focused and student focused as New Zealand is. I don't know if that answers your question, but it allowed me to talk for 90 seconds. So thank you very much, Josh. That's just a lovely, thank you very much. Hi Richard, caught the tail end, hope we'll be able to blah, blah. Lots of thank yous, everyone. Thank you, Lorraine. How do you identify and support students who struggle to learn? Okay, that's a really important question. How does a school like mine, that was an existing school before all this started, how do you support students who apparently struggle or seemingly struggle to learn? And a lot of this does hang on developing that mindset over time. You can't develop a self-sufficient expectation that you can't develop that in learners straight away or particularly quickly. So in my school, for example, as we make this shift from the old model to the new model, you've got to focus. I would focus on your youngest in your school, and even almost, I wouldn't say forget because it sounds a bit harsh to say that, but I would almost focus on your new intake in the next year. Develop a model around student-centered learning and just change their expectations. Once any student has been in a school system, a teacher-led school system for a number of years, it's very hard and a lot of work to change those expectations. And for the sake of the teachers' stress levels, I think it's easier to focus starting from scratch, start with your youngest year group, and develop a new model of schooling from then on. A lot of teachers agree that when students arrive in a school, if you present learning as a student-led thing, they won't know any difference. And it's from then on, it's a little bit more straightforward to develop learners, so that you're not then stuck with this question of, are there students that struggle to learn? Because any student simply has to be aware of who they are and where they are and what their next step is. It's not all a case of a standardized, an attempt to produce a standardized student. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Thank you very much for all these questions. Okay, what do we got here? And one more. Michael, is not the drive for incorporating tech in danger of just upgrading the factory model? I think you're right. I think you're right, Michael. In most cases, unless you change this mindset, I'll end on this. Unless you change this mindset, the technology has no impact. If you follow my blog, I've written a post recently on EdTech having zero impact at all because it's all about this mindset. I think that's my half an hour done. So thank you so much for popping in and listening to me. And I hope you enjoy my slides, and I think they'll be available afterwards. Thank you very much. I'll answer questions online. Bye.